Alrighty. So happy to be here today. Happy to have to have all of you here. And this is something which which it definitely touches very close to me. As I've been kind of learning, just like in terms of recruiting, I've noticed tons of different tools that are out there. And kind of what we've done internally is we've actually tested a bunch of different tools today, and basically we just want to kind of show you some of the tools that we've seen that we think have been extremely helpful for us and for other companies. Um, at the same time, I do not believe that we have, we have not tested every tool out there. So just want to make sure that you guys are aware that this is only a very small subset of tools that we have taken a look at. However, we do encourage you guys to basically evaluate all of these on your own, and also to take a look at some other tools that may be very similar to the ones that we're showing today. So let's get started. So a little bit about me. So I've been here, with Intello for the last couple of years. For the most part, I'm in charge of kind of more or less business things here. So sales, marketing, a lot of educational content kind of runs through me. I've gotten a lot of opportunity to observe and to chat with basically hundreds of other recruiters that have given me a very good understanding of the space and kind of ways to improve this entire process, not just for us, but for all sorts of companies and agencies. And the agenda that we have today is basically the first step is we're going to go through a number of tools that will help make email a lot more manageable for you. Some of the tools that we'll be covering include ways to track, ways to track your emails, ways to basically manage pipelines better, ways to make sure that as you're using your email, you can be the most efficient possible. There's a number of ways. I mean, I've seen a bunch of recruiters, they're like inboxes, and they get just extremely populated. So there's a number of tools today that we'll be covering that should help in terms of making that a lot easier to manage for you guys. Additionally, we'll also be looking at a few basic pipeline trackers. There's like a number of services out there, but there's a few that have actually caught our eye, and are ones that we've actually used internally, at least at various points. So definitely wanted to show a few of those today, especially for like tracking candidates and for tracking contacts. That can be super helpful. And lastly, we'll be covering basically applicant tracking systems. I know that most of you have probably taken a look at these before, but there's a few in here that we did want to cover, that did stand out. We'll probably be running through that one a little bit quickly, but definitely want to give you guys at least a little bit of background on that, so that in case you are looking at other systems, you can at least have as much information as possible. So with that, we'll get started now on some tools to basically make your email life a lot easier. So there are a number of tools in terms of email management that like we have come across that like make things a lot easier to actually handle. Some of the tools here, they will give you a lot more context about candidates. Some will be very helpful in terms of following up, and some will be very helpful in terms of tracking, in terms of mobile, and in terms of just typing things a lot faster. So that's kind of the like, agenda for probably about the first half of this webinar. So with that, we'll get started on the first tool. So the very first one, this is one that I probably use almost all the time. It's something that I would strongly encourage almost anyone that uses Gmail. I would strongly encourage to actually download this right away. And this is called Reportive. And what this is basically it's a basic Gmail extension, which when you hover over an email address within your inbox, it'll actually hover on the right side. It'll show you all the social data that is attached to that email address. So oftentimes you'll actually end up getting LinkedIn data, Twitter data, as well as other information, which gives you more context about the people that you are that you are exchanging emails with. And in like addition to that, there's also some like tools within it that actually allow you to actually directly connect with those candidates. So let's take a look at a couple examples of this. So right here, so within Gmail, so let's say that so this seems to be an email that my colleague was actually sending to me, or actually one that she got from me. And if you notice here, so when she checks her own email, on the right side, what ends up popping up is this entire kind of console that shows all of my social data. If you notice here, you'll see my LinkedIn, my Facebook, my Twitter, as well as my Google Plus, and there's a number of other profiles that like I have too. I'm a little bit of a weird exception in the sense that I actually have a lot more data. I'm very liberal in terms of which, just like in terms of which sites that I do sign up for, and I've actually attached all of those just like within this like entire application. But oftentimes you'll actually see people with with at least the LinkedIn and oftentimes also Twitter and Facebook, and this can give you a ton of context about candidates in a way where if you're just sending emails, it becomes extremely hard to actually tell who they are and kind of and their prior experience. So let's go to the next slide here. So this is that like entire console in a lot more detail. So a couple things here. So one of the cool things about this is I can actually follow people through Twitter directly through Reportive. So, which is very helpful, especially when you are contacting candidates. Oftentimes, with like engineers, like one thing which like we stress is if you want to use Twitter effectively, oftentimes like sending a message outright may be may be construed, may not actually may not fall well on that engineer. But one way that that we've noticed that it works really effectively is to actually follow them and to keep track and then kind of engage with them over time with their tweets, with what they have been posting, and that can allow you to have a much easier way to actually kind of to actually get in touch with them. Additionally, like if they happen to be a friend on Facebook or someone that that you trust to to like add to that network, then you can add that person as a friend on Facebook. And likewise with LinkedIn specifically, this is probably most helpful. Actually, FYI, they were bought by LinkedIn for $15 million, I believe, last year. So nowadays, the like, entire team that actually built Reportive, they work for LinkedIn. And to my understanding, they've actually built a few tools that are similar to this that work within Outlook as well. I'm not 100% positive about that simply because I don't use Outlook. But to my understanding, they do have some sort of plugin where within your Outlook, you can actually kind of access people's LinkedIn data just by accessing their like email address. So that is something which I would recommend looking into if you do use Outlook regularly. And then in like addition, one cool thing that that does show is it'll also show you recent emails that you've had with that person, and you can compose something from scratch directly from here. So yeah, okay. So for the next tool, the next kind of really important one that that's actually been extremely helpful for like me personally is one that's called Follow Up CC. So I'm not sure, but with like recruiters, what I've seen is there are tons of emails every single day that like you have to deal with, and basically keeping track of all of those can be, can like be pretty difficult. So, Follow Up CC is a tool that's actually helped me drastically kind of improve my own efficiency and make sure that that I never forget to actually follow up with like any of the people that are in my inbox. So what does Follow Up CC do? Um, so what it does basically, it's a simple tool where actually in the BCC section, as you're reaching out to someone, you can actually set up reminders so that message will actually pop up in your inbox as an unread message again at any specified date that you'd like. So this allows us to basically kind of snooze emails, basically set like really smart reminders to like reach back out to various candidates down the road. So like especially like the best use case that like I've heard is one like let's say that there's an engineer that's that you do reach out to cold, and they tell you that they won't be looking at least for the next 3 months. So what's really nice to do is that you can actually set up a very simple, in your BCC box, you can actually put up, either 3 months or 6 months. You can put in any date there to basically to bump that email back up into your inbox on the date that you'd like. So it makes it very helpful because what we can do is 3 months from now I can set up this like reminder, and it'll pop up at the very top of my inbox, letting me know that what, on this date, I should reach back out to this candidate. Can be extremely helpful. Um, but yeah, so this can be extremely helpful in terms of making sure that you're managing all those candidates that are in your pipeline, and making sure that you don't let any one of them kind of fall through those cracks. And the link actually for follow up CC is actually just that. So if you just type in followup.cc into your URL box, you should be able to see that tool. I think they may have. I think the tool, to my understanding, I believe is $10 a month, which is pretty affordable. But for the boost in efficiency, is something that that I've used, and that I would strongly recommend. Cool. Um, so yeah, so like exactly like you can follow up with someone and then just make sure that you have that reminder. The next tool is actually very similar, and this is Boomerang. And this is probably actually a little bit more popular, at least to my understanding. This is one that actually gets that I believe gets promoted quite a bit within the Chrome Web Store, and it's something that works for Gmail, and actually works within Firefox and Chrome. So what Boomerang does is actually very useful. It kind of it does a little bit of what Follow Up CC does, but also adds a few other tools in place that actually allow you to to have a little bit more functionality. So the couple things which actually Boomerang kind of handles is it will actually allow you. It actually allows you to basically set reminders for emails that you've received, and it allows you to actually schedule emails for later, which can be very, very helpful in case you want to reach out to someone at that exact time, that time of day that that you feel ends up being that ends up being a much better time to reach out to candidates. So this is a little bit about Boomerang. So the one kind of cool thing with like Boomerang here is that, if there is an email in your inbox, on the left side here, we'll see that what you can do is you can actually click on Boomerang and basically tell yourself and basically tell it to actually to remind you to look at that email again at some specified date. That could be a like hour from now, 2 hours, or it could even be days, weeks, months from now too. Additionally, let's say that you actually do that you end up composing a message. On the right side, what you can do is you can basically type out your entire email and then basically schedule it to actually send at a future date or future hour, which can be super helpful for you to actually get in touch, to basically send those emails out at the time that that you think works well. What I've kind of noticed is with engineers, especially, a lot of times, like during work, like they will more or less will be more or less just like in the zone, with their, whether it's coding, whether it's their own projects and meetings. But sometimes it actually might be very good to actually send things out early in the morning, so that so that the very first thing that they see in their inbox, whether it's at 7 a.m., 8 a.m., or 9 a.m., so that the first thing that they see ends up being that email. So like oftentimes timing those like messages for early in the day ends up working really well. Or you can actually also time them for for the evening, and or night, when sometimes, which kind of weirdly I've like noticed that actually a lot of engineers end up being somewhat nocturnal. So that could actually be a like very good case for you there. Um, Sorry, so it seems like there are actually a couple questions here, so just want to make sure that I'm addressing these. Um, okay, so okay, this email was dropped in spam. Okay, so let's see. So Lem here actually asked. So this is in like regards to follow up CC, and Lem asks actually, are there any concerns in terms of those emails getting dropped into spam? It's a really good question. I think in general, actually, if that original email that you have is in your inbox, I believe that this will actually not pop up into your spam. All it does is it'll just mark it as unread, and then it just boosts it back up to the top. So, to my understanding, there shouldn't be any issues with that. But at the same time, like I'll definitely test it out. But from my usage, I haven't noticed that to ever happen. Cool. So let's move on and let's take a look at how this looks in your actual inbox. So within your inbox itself, so basically as you're composing, and I believe actually Gmail changed up the way that they actually compose. You can see in the top right here there is there's that link for the for the new Gmail Compose experience. So I believe this will actually still live within that like smaller box, but there should be a button that says Send Later. And effectively, what you can do is, you can just schedule this for any time that you'd like, and the system will actually it will shoot that email at the exact date that you specified, and can be very very useful for you guys. Cool. So that's those are the couple tools that that like we've noticed in terms of scheduling, in terms of scheduling emails, in terms of sending out later, and in terms of making sure that you stay on top of like everything that is in your inbox. What I kind of wanted to actually go over now are tools that actually are pretty cool in terms of tracking your emails and seeing how well they're doing. So what do I mean by that? One of the most important things, and I believe within LinkedIn you can do this, but this is only this is like exclusive to just using InMails. But you can effectively track exactly how all those messages that you're sending are doing. So which emails have been opened, which have been clicked through, and which have been replied to. But as you're using email, there is no default way of doing that. But there are a few plugins that we have actually come across that we've really liked, and one of them is Yesware. So Yesware is pretty has been around for a couple of years, to my understanding, and I believe they just raised around a $4 million round within the last year. So they will be around for a good amount of time. And to my understanding, it is a very simple Gmail plugin. And what it allows you to do is you can track those emails, and it allows you to see exactly which emails have been opened, clicked through, and responded to. So it allows you to see exactly how like effective those cold emails that you're sending candidates, exactly how good those are doing. Additionally, you can actually set up templates, and you can also set up reminders, and it does also integrate with many CRM systems, which we'll cover in the next in the next couple slides. So this is what like Yesware kind of looks like within the new Gmail Compose function. So when I'm creating a like new email, what it allows me to do is there's a couple things here. On the right side, you'll see that there's the section for templates, and I can basically create templates and group them according to different stages of my pipeline. So, for example, this was actually created for salespeople. However, there's a lot of applications for actually using this in terms of recruiting. So, for example, let's say like I can set up different stages of my pipeline here. One could be prospecting, which is the same thing, which is effectively sending cold emails out to candidates, and I can set up templates that I've used there. We actually have a white paper that we posted out that can probably help you guys out in terms of templates, which I'll share after this entire presentation. But effectively, like you can create all these different templates, which just allows you to just like streamline this process of sending emails, especially if you do them on a one-by-one basis. This can definitely save you a ton of time in terms of sending emails to each and every candidate. Additionally, at the bottom left, you'll see that there's a couple of buttons here. So one is probably the most important is the ability to track those emails. As long as that's clicked, what this does is this will drop a pixel, I believe, in the emails that you send, and that allows us to understand like which emails have been opened, clicked through, and replied to. To my understanding, I think there are some email systems, there are some email providers that actually will block this. I believe Gmail works extremely well with this. I do think Yahoo and most of the major email carriers do work with this, but I have heard of a few that actually will block this. So in general, it should work really well, but on like occasion, you may not it may not always work. Additionally, there's a way for us to actually set up reminders. So we can set these for future dates. And the button right there for CRM, if you're a paid customer, you can actually integrate Yesware with your existing CRM. And this is what, and actually, there's another part of Yesware too that lives within Gmail, which it'll actually live at the very top of your entire inbox. If you notice here, there's that famous Gmail kind of text ad, and like above it lists, what it shows me is it actually shows me all of the messages that I've been sending recently, and it shows me like all the actions that like people have been taking. So it actually tells me exactly when someone that I've emailed opens, clicks, or replies to any of my messages. And on the right side, what's actually kind of cool is it'll actually also show you which like device that they're using and actually where they access that email. Can be a little bit creepy, but at the same time, like in this entire space, I've noticed that there's a lot of that there's a lot of creepiness going on. So this just allows you guys to have a few more tools at your disposal to kind of understand and basically give context and actually analytics behind how your emails are doing. And in terms of integration with Yesware, Yesware actually does integrate with a number of tools, most notably Salesforce, Capsule, Sugar CRM. And then if you're using some of the other tools that we'll actually cover later today, like Pipedrive, Highrise, and Nimble, it like also works there. So you can have a very good idea of actually how those emails are doing, and that gets synced to the contacts within those different systems. So moving on from Yesware, there's another tool that's actually very similar, which is called Tout App. This is actually from from the knowledge that I've actually learned from people that have used this heavily, is actually a lot more powerful. It's very similar to Yesware, but actually costs a lot more. So FYI, I think to my understanding, Yesware is either $5 a month or $10 a month per user, and I believe they will be adding a lot more functionality down the road, which may result in like other tiered plans. But with ToutApp, their packages start at $30 per month per user, and what it allows you to do is it's really good actually for like batch emailing and for detailed tracking. So they've actually been around a little bit longer, and I've heard that this actually works really well, for a number of different use cases, for sales, for biz dev, but for recruiting, this can be very helpful, especially if you have pre-built lists of people that are very similar, and you have templates like this allows you to actually batch email extremely quickly and track all of that all in one go. So let's take a look at this. The other cool thing about Tout App too is that it actually works with both with iOS. So it'll actually work with both with iPhones and iPads as well. So you can actually track the emails not only that you're sending through your desktop, but or desktop or laptop, but it'll also work with both your iPad and your iPhone too. And the tool basically it actually provides you the couple things that I know of that it does better are it actually does a very good job of tracking each individual link that you have within your email. Which Yesware will do is it'll actually show you if something has been clicked. ToutApp will show you which links have been clicked on, how often, and gives you very detailed analytics on the back end to show exactly how those messages are doing. And this is something that I would strongly recommend for anyone that is doing recruiting, is because we just the like nature of kind of how it, like especially looking for like engineers how tough it's been. It's very important to understand which messages are doing well, and by tracking that you can over time um, make your emails a lot more effective. It's basic A/B testing, which allows you to test like which templates are working well, which like strategies will like result in like much better messaging. So the next thing, which I want to cover, so now we're shifting away a little bit from like tracking, from like email tracking, to ways to actually make typing emails a little bit faster. So some of the tools that I mentioned before, we can make pre-built templates, but oftentimes there's actually ways like there's a tool that we'll be covering now, which is called Type It For Me, which works only for Mac software, but can be highly effective in terms of just like quickly in terms of quickly typing up something that actually auto expands to a much larger block of text. So what I mean by that is, for example, so let's say that that there are certain things that I just end up typing extremely frequently. Sometimes if there's a candidate that like responds back, I may have a very kind of canned response back, or just something which is very which ends up being very similar time and time again. Instead of having to type out that whole thing, what you can do with like with like Type It For Me is you can actually set up really quick blurbs, and if you just type those out, it'll actually auto expand into this like full out, into this full out text. So for example, like if I want to set up a like meeting with someone, I could set up a really quick blurb that just says meeting setup. And when I type that out, it'll just auto expand out to this entire block of text on the right side. So it allows you to like really expedite those emails that you're sending and make sure that that you save like a lot of time, just like in terms of email correspondence. I believe there are a few other tools like this that are available for for like Windows. Um, to there was as I did my research on this, there wasn't anything that really stood out. But if you do if you do like a very basic Google search for, I believe, text expander Windows, you should see a few pop up that should be very similar to this. But from my understanding, it's almost all of them work the same way, in the way that where you can just type out a very quick blurb and then have this like block of text pop up. And it actually looks like someone shared here. It seems like actually there is one. There's another tool that's actually similar to this, which is called Typinator. I believe that's spelled Typinator. So that's like another one, which we could take a look at too. So outside of Type It For Me, another tool that can be very helpful is one thing that can be very powerful, especially as you're sending cold emails to candidates, is to show a lot more about yourself within your actual email signature. And one of the tools that we've seen that actually works really well for this is a tool called WiseStamp. And WiseStamp is basically a way where you can actually automate your like existing email signatures, and you can make them a lot more interactive, including links to like social profiles. And there's a few apps which actually make it which make it very helpful in terms of actually engaging with candidates and allowing candidates to kind of see more about who you are, and who you represent. So some of the apps that I've seen with WiseStamp, and a couple of the cool things that you can do is you can link your LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook accounts, which definitely which like gives context. The design is pretty nice, and very colorful, so it's like it's a very quick and easy way to to actually kind of show more about yourself within the emails themselves. And there's a couple apps in here that can be pretty cool. One in the two that stand out to me are both the LinkedIn connector and the Twitter app, where LinkedIn Connector specifically, you can actually, you can show, you can actually better connect with, through LinkedIn with those candidates. It allows you to actually show basic common connections, and I believe you can actually connect to two people directly from there. So it makes it very easy for those candidates to actually engage with you if they are interested. The goal here is to make it as easy as possible for any candidate that you reach out to interact with you. And likewise with Twitter, there is one where you can actually show basically recent tweets. I know that there's a bunch of recruiters that'll end up posting, whether through JobVite or through other ATS systems. They'll post their actual job openings. That could be the type of thing that would be very helpful as you are sending emails, is to kind of show what those different openings are, just so that those like candidates don't have to spend too much time kind of like perusing through your entire website. Cool. And the other cool one, and this is for iOS users. So this is for both iPhone and I believe iPad too. So they actually launched this recently. The Mailbox app is one that's been extremely popular recently. And they were actually they were bought by Dropbox for $100 million. I want to say a few months ago. So they will be around, and I believe Dropbox will be putting a ton of effort behind this team. But effectively, what Mailbox is, it's a really slick email app for your iPhone or for your iPad, which allows you to actually organize your like email, to like snooze emails, to set reminders, and to kind of treat your entire email inbox as kind of like a to-do list. The design is really beautiful, and in general, just like allows you to quickly like manage emails, as you're on the go. The like UI is very clean, and I believe the way that it works is they actually have a few default folders which they make, and just by swiping at emails, you can either archive them, trash them, put them into a list, and or snooze them for later. And then when you snooze them, they'll actually pop up again to the top of your inbox at the date that you've specified for them to pop back up. So like kind of like follow up CC, kind of like Boomerang, except for mobile, and works extremely well with that. Cool. So that's what we have in terms of email tools for today. I just want to take a second to see if there was any questions that that like any of you had. If you did, just feel free to just type those questions in. Although at the same time, like kind of as we go through all this, I will try to address all these questions as I do progress as well. So we'll give a couple seconds there, and then we'll proceed on, and we'll be covering pipeline trackers next. Cool. So it seems like we don't have any questions at least as of right now. But again, like if you do have questions, just like type them in to that questions box on the right side. So pipeline tracking. So this is like, so when I say pipeline tracking, I'm thinking of tools that are a little bit earlier stage than a full-blown ATS. Tools like especially for like startups or, and or if you're managing kind of like, kind of funnels that you don't want to exist within your ATS system, these tools can be extremely helpful in terms of just like in terms of visualizing that, those pipelines that you have. So the first one, which we want to cover was actually is Asana. And this is a tool that we use heavily internally. We use this to actually track projects, and it works extremely well. It actually also works extremely well in terms of tracking in terms of tracking candidate pipelines. So so like Asana, they were actually founded by the original CTO at Facebook, Dustin Moskovitz. So and they have a ton of funding behind them from from some excellent VCs. So they will be around for a long time and they are constantly iterating. From like what I've seen, each and every month, like more or less end up seeing newer, just like newer and better features, and it can be extremely helpful. And one cool thing is they do end up addressing feedback really really well. The cool thing is, you like, can assign projects. You can create workspaces, and the one that I create is one for is like one for recruiting. And I'll kind of show you one that I created for myself. Obviously, I'm not recruiting any of these people. If I was, we'd be in like extremely, we'd be in very good shape here. But for the sake of it, I included a few techies in here and some San Francisco athletes. But this is how you can use Asana to actually track pipelines. So what I've done is in the top left, if you've noticed, there's a link there that says recruiting pipeline. That's the overall workspace that I've created, and this will house everything that I have in terms of my pipeline. On the left side, I've created different projects, and the way that I would do this is I would create a separate project for each different role that I'm looking for. So for us, so there's like one for an iOS developer, Android engineer, front end engineer, UX designer, and then just like VP of marketing, sales, and biz dev. So for each one of those different projects, I can add people in there. If you look at the middle console here, I can create different headings that can be different stages of my pipeline. So if you've noticed here, like at the very top, like I've like put one stage there for like people that we are that we are at least in like ongoing negotiations with, and then I can make those headings for different stages of the pipeline. And on the right side, we can actually take notes on those candidates, and this is this works really well to actually share with your team. We can set up different subtasks, like for example, I put in a phone screen, initial interview, team interview in there, and we can check mark all those boxes. Once we've actually accomplished those tasks. I can add tags. So for like Zuckerberg, I've included Boston, Harvard. You can create tags that are actually searchable in the top left box. So it actually allows you to kind of sort and search by a number of different parameters. And you can keep all this dialogue that your team has about certain candidates directly within this task, which can make it very very helpful. You can set due dates at the top there. I have marked July 31st as my due date for him. You can add attachments. It makes it very easy to kind of keep track of all of your interactions with a candidate, all within this one console. The next kind of tool in terms of pipeline tracking that I want to cover is Highrise, which is made by the team that's at 37 Signals. That's made Basecamp and a few other tools. They're based out in Chicago, and they've been around for a while, and they're extremely well known. Just like amongst engineers. But Highrise is actually, I'd say it's a little bit, it's like more dedicated towards being a CRM system than, than like Asana. But Highrise is basically, it's a way to actually manage contacts. It's very like, and the way that you can organize stuff in there is actually extremely powerful. So let's take a look at what a Highrise profile kind of looks like. So what I can do is, I can add people in here very easily. I can include their like LinkedIn links. I can create notes. I can put their job titles. I can include links for anything that is relevant to to those people. I can set up tasks for like later. So on the right, top right, if you noticed, there are a few sections there where I can create tasks for each candidate. And within the center console, we can keep a stream of dialogue, much like with like Asana, but just allows us to kind of keep track of all the dialogue that we have around various candidates. Additionally, I can tag candidates with like different things, and all those tags are searchable. So again, like makes it very easy for me to go back and search for people that I've tagged based off various things. A few of the tags that we've used are ones that are centered around conferences. So if I met people that were at conferences, I'll tag them all the same thing, so that when I reach back out to them, then I know that that's where I met them, and I can sort people basically according to that type of information. You can keep track of phone numbers, email addresses, and actually there's a pretty cool LinkedIn tab where if you click on that, it'll actually pull in LinkedIn data straight into these Highrise profiles. And I believe Twitter does the same thing too. Cool. So next I wanted to move on to a pipeline tracker that actually can live directly within Gmail. So this is called Streak. And Streak is actually, can be very powerful. And in general, you'll be living primarily within your like inbox. So Streak can make it very powerful to to like kind of keep track of pipelines directly in there. So a couple cool things with it. It functions within Gmail. You can maintain conversations. You can kind of visualize that entire pipeline. You can create and save email templates, which is very helpful. And you can also schedule emails for later. So let's take a look at how this looks like. So in Streak, this will live directly within Gmail, and at the very top, there's this kind of pipeline tracker, which you can actually customize. So you can create different stages of that pipeline. You can create a lead, phone screen, interviewed, group interview, any like any other stages down the road. And can be very helpful for you to kind of visualize that entire pipeline. And these pipelines can be shared with the entire team. Additionally, you can actually, you can dig into each of those leads separately, and this allows you to actually, to see, who is actually assigned to those leads. You can set up follow-up dates. You can take notes directly in here, um, um, and you can also keep track of like all those leads directly on the left side. It seems like I did have a question here. Someone was saying that a lot of these tools work with Gmail. If you use Outlook, should they switch? So I'm definitely biased here. I've used Gmail most of my life, or at least most of my work life. And in general, the kind of cool thing about Gmail as opposed to Outlook is that there's just a lot more extensions, a lot more customizability. So these types of tools oftentimes will get built for Gmail significantly earlier than they will for Outlook. There are sometimes equivalent tools for Outlook, so I would search those up, but they're usually a little bit hard to find, and there's not quite as many of them. But yeah, yes, I would say Gmail is extremely powerful overall. Cool. So let's move on to the next one. So the next one's Pipedrive, and this is a separate tool. So this one does not live in Gmail, but it does integrate with it. In Pipedrive, the one really cool thing about Pipedrive is the way that they visualize pipelines is extremely intuitive. So it was created for actually managing sales pipelines. But again, like there's a lot of corollaries between a sales pipeline and one for recruiting. So the cool thing is we can organize different stages for people. And actually, Pipedrive also gives you pretty good metrics in terms of understanding how each of those stages, how people are actually progressing through each of those stages. And there's mobile capability. It does integrate with Google Apps, and I think it does integrate with a few other tools, including possibly Salesforce and Highrise as well. So this is what a like pipe drive pipeline looks like. So this is kind of catered more towards sales, but at the same time, I can create different stages that are like intuitive to kind of what that makes sense to recruiting. So I can make one for prospecting, for for contacted, for phone screen, interviewed, group interview, and then and then hired. The cool thing is it just arranges them all in these separate columns, and underneath them you'll just visualize like all those candidates that are a part of each one of those stages. And if you click into any one of these, what ends up happening is you'll actually there'll be a nice card where basically teams can actually kind of manage and kind of keep track of like all their dialogue within there. And the other kind of cool thing is they actually provide really good analytics in terms of how those people are actually progressing through each of those stages. So again, like this is this image is actually catered towards sales, but you can do this for for recruiting. You can have a much better idea of kind of how people are actually progressing from from like being contacted to the phone screen stage, from the phone screen stage to the interview, and you can realize and actually understanding that like migration between those different stages allows you to focus on the areas which allow you to to like improve various aspects of your entire process. And then there's a couple other tools, which for a lack of time, will not be able to cover today. But I did want to mention one is Nimble, which is which is like a CRM, which is very similar to Highrise. Actually, the UI is a little bit nicer, and they have some pretty cool integrations with actually with Reportive, with LinkedIn. So it actually allows you to have to like visualize a lot about your contacts and kind of manage all of that in one place pretty easily, and it's pretty affordable to my understanding. And the other one is actually a new one, which is called Greenhouse, which I've heard really good things about. Haven't gotten the chance to actually take a look at it, but it is one that I would encourage you guys to at least check out. I believe they are trying to build kind of like a next-gen applicant tracking system that's a lot more customizable. But I've heard extremely good things about it, and the website for Greenhouse is greenhouse.io. So yeah, were there any questions in terms of pipeline trackers? If not, I can kind of progress. We have, about 15 minutes left. I wanted to kind of run through ATS systems pretty quick, and then leave some time towards the end for us to kind of go over other aspects. Um, but for now, it seems like we're on pretty good timing here. If there's no questions, I'll just kind of, oh, okay, cool. Looks like one popped up here. Are any of those trackers free? Good question. They might have. So Asana is. So like Asana is definitely free. It's free up to 30 users, and at 30 users, that's like when they start when they start charging people. Highrise has a free option up until I believe 250 contacts, and it's actually pretty affordable beyond that. I think like up to 5,000 contacts is like 25 bucks a month, or and then I think up to 10,000 contacts is 50 bucks a month. So they do have like different stages there. But both of those I know are do have free options, and actually Streak is free to my understanding too. Streak is just I think you can find it in the Chrome Web Store, and then just add it to your Gmail. And I believe they have a free option now, and they will be offering tiered options down the road. I'm not 100% sure about Nimble and or Greenhouse, and I think Pipedrive is a paid product, but from my understanding, that's pretty affordable as well. Cool. So I'll move on now to applicant tracking systems. So most of you here have probably taken a look at either one or actually possibly many of these. So didn't want to actually go through these in too much detail, but did at least want to cover them and just like offer some pros and cons based off of our own research. There's a number of other applicant tracking systems out there, so by no means is this is it as comprehensive, but we did want to cover a few that we've seen that we've seen pop up quite a bit, and kind of just cover some of like the good and bad, just like in like regards to to all these ATS systems. As always, we like encourage you guys to to actually take a look at these separately, and to kind of evaluate like which ones make the most sense for your own organization. So the first one that we want to cover was Bullhorn. So Bullhorn, I believe, is based out in Boston, and so pretty cool in the sense that they have very good pricing. They have a lot of customization. They have some like social sharing tools, and it does integrate with Insight Squared, Outlook, and Google Apps. The one downside to Bullhorn is that I believe it only works with Windows and Internet Explorer. So if you're using a Mac or if you're using any other type of PC, you know, um, Bullhorn will unfortunately not work. To my understanding, I think they will be adding this down the road. So, like pros and cons for this. So this is just like a just like a general kind of overview, and we'll have this for each and every one of these ATS systems that I cover. But some of the good stuff. Very You can definitely customize it. There's some simple organized modules. And they actually have a tool called Bullhorn Reach, which is pretty cool too. There's a tool that they have called Bullhorn Radar that actually will track people making updates on their LinkedIn profiles. So that could be pretty helpful in terms of understanding candidates and kind of the actions that they're taking. And on the right side, like there's a few cons. Definitely a major downside is that it only works for both Windows and IE. There is relatively limited support. They were bought recently, I believe, um, and um, and they are geared a little bit more towards staffing agencies than with enterprises. Oh, and apparently Bullhorn Reach is actually available to anyone, so that's actually free of charge. You don't have to be a Bullhorn customer for that. But that is one really cool aspect that they do offer. So moving on next. So next is Aperture. So cool things about Aperture. I mean, I actually have I've been seeing this pop up quite a bit recently. It's pretty simple and it's definitely candidate friendly. Um, and they do have integrations with both Career Builder and Monster. So if you do want to post ads, I'm sorry, if you do want to post job postings, you do have that capability. And people can also apply it through Facebook too, which is a little bit unique to them. Some pros and cons in terms of Aperture. It is also extremely customizable. It works over a number of devices. They have a number of different pricing options. For both for like hiring managers and for recruiters, and it's all web based. A few of the cons. Apparently, the layout is a little bit busy and cluttered. And in terms of implementation, there's um, there are there are limited options, and I believe there's no email integration with it, which is definitely one of the downsides. Next is Job Score, which is one which I think a few of you guys use today. And this one definitely focuses a lot more on referrals and kind of like network, and on your social networks for recruiting. It does integrate with social media and email, so you can definitely post, just like post your jobs to your Twitter page, LinkedIn page, and Facebook. And there's like a number of ways to track reporting. So you can track your pipelines, like flow and sources of all those candidates. And the pricing options are pretty flexible overall. So again, pros, like there's a number of different pricing options. The candidate experience is very straightforward and very simple, and it works on a number of devices and is web based. Unfortunately, no CRM functionality. The integration with Google Calendar is a little bit lacking, and some of the workflow steps can be a little bit time consuming. Next is Resumator. This is one that I've been hearing extremely frequently recently. So they're based out in Pittsburgh, and in general, actually, I've heard extremely good things about them. They're kind of geared a little bit more towards SMBs, and they have a number of different pricing options that can be very, very helpful. That allows you to kind of use them effectively and scale up, at an affordable cost. Um, they do integrate with Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and they do have some like pretty cool tools in terms of reporting and analytics. If you upgrade to their pro plan. So a couple good things here. There are no hidden termination fees. It's like pretty intuitive, very easy to use. And in terms of integrations, like in terms of social integrations, very powerful. Again, some of the cons are kind of catered more towards SMBs. So if you work at a larger company and/or kind of like a larger staffing agency, it may not be the best fit. And in terms of analytics, you would have to subscribe to their higher plan there. Smart Recruiters is another one. This one, they're based in San Francisco, and one of the cool things with them is actually they have a free option, so you can actually use them, without paying anything, and then for like various upgrades, that's where you would have to charge. But very easy to use, extremely good user interface for candidates, very ideal in terms of kind of using it. And Smart Recruiters is definitely catered more towards company ATS. So if you're like a tech startup or even larger than that, that's where Smart Recruiters can be very powerful. Some of the pros, works across a number of devices, a great candidate experience, and you can one-click job post to hundreds of different job boards. So it definitely allows you to at least get distribution for your open positions pretty easily. Few of the cons, if you have the unpaid package, there isn't quite as much support. But if you do pay, then that's where you'll have much better support from them. There isn't too much customization, and it's not like a full blown CRM. But in general, I've heard very good things about them. The last is probably one which I see most commonly is JobVite, which almost like most tech startups use them. They have a number of different products, including JobVite Hire. I believe it's actually no longer called Recruit. I think it's called Refer and Engage. And JobVite really does a good job in terms of it's like an entire platform in terms of social recruiting. So it does, it really allows your like existing, your existing colleagues to actually, share within their own networks, various job postings that you may have. And in terms of integrations, to my understanding, JobVite actually has a ton of them. A lot of pros here. So it like does integrate with Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Very easy actually for like candidates. I think actually both JobVite and Resumator, you can one-click apply using just your LinkedIn profile, which is very helpful. There's a lot of filtering options. You can actually implement Google Analytics, which gives you really powerful tools to understand kind of deal just like flow and your pipelines. Works across a number of different devices. Cons are just in terms of workflow. I have heard from some users that that in terms of like daily workflow, JobVite can be a little bit annoying. I think the search functionality within JobVite's a little bit limited as well. And if you do want to use JobVite Engage, there is an additional fee for that. So now I want to kind of transition more towards kind of larger ATS systems. There's three of which I want to cover. One is SuccessFactors. They do have two tools. They have one for enterprises and one for SMBs. Most solutions, so they actually have a number of like different solutions outside of just the ATS system. They have ways to actually kind of track existing employees, ways to kind of to like understand performance and compensation, etc. So it's kind of a full suite for very large organizations. A lot of customization ability. The ATS is actually very robust, and there's a number of tools that they do offer. However, and actually the search capability is actually apparently very, very powerful within SuccessFactors. Unfortunately, some of the cons, so actually to my understanding, they were bought by SAP for a few $1 billion, I want to say about a year ago, a year or two ago. But the interface is a little bit clunky, um, and in terms of email integration, a little bit limited, and it's very costly. So it's like definitely geared more towards larger enterprises. But if you are a large company, this could be one of the ATS systems that you'd like to look at. Another one's iCIMS. iCIMS has three different tools. They have iCIMS Connect for managing passive candidates, iCIMS Recruit for active candidates that are applying to your job postings, and Onboard to help people that you've hired kind of get onboard a little bit quicker. It's great for medium to large corporations, and it's actually used quite a bit by both staffing and recruiting companies. Some of the benefits, they actually have mass email capability within the system itself, which can be very helpful, especially if you're dealing with large volumes of candidates. The interface is easy, and the workflow is very easy to navigate. It's kind of like a full CRM, and there are some very social recruiting and passive candidate tools that are built in. They only have those three products, so it's not a full suite like SuccessFactors, and there's no mobile version, so there are a couple downsides to it too. And lastly, if we just want to cover Taleo, which has been in the space for a long time and was bought by Oracle, I believe, for a little bit over $1 billion within the last year. But yeah, they're definitely catered towards very large organizations in terms of security and whatnot. I've heard that they've been really good. Um, so they do have a few different social recruiting capabilities, including referrals and job distribution. So you can post to different job boards pretty easily. And they are integrated with a number of different products, and the workflow management is very solid. Cons definitely are the canned experience is very lacking. I'm not sure if you guys have seen this, but we've gone to various companies' jobs page. When they use Taleo, there's the old school kind of search functionality, and I can say from my own experience, it is a pain using that. But it does allow for, on the back end when you're using Taleo, it does allow for really good tracking and pretty good workflow for the actual users. But it's definitely geared more towards enterprise for like larger enterprises. So for large companies, it makes a lot more sense. So that's all I had today in terms of tools. I want to take any questions. If there was anything that I could cover. If not, there were a couple other kind of tools. A couple other things which I did want to kind of cover before we basically ended today. One thing, we will be posting this entire webinar online. So in case you did miss a little part of it, or you'd like to basically reference this after the fact, we'll be posting this later today, as well as the slides. The slides could actually be very helpful in terms of kind of taking a look at all these different services. In addition, we've actually also posted a couple blog posts already that kind of detail a few of these services in like a little bit more. So if you want to take a look at that, including some of the demo videos that those companies offer, you can take a look at our blog, which is blog.intello.com, and you can take a look at those different services. But in conclusion, there are a bunch of different tools, that you can use to basically streamline recruiting, especially within email itself. I would encourage you guys to actually, to always be on the lookout for new tools. And if there is anything that comes up, by all means, just like let us know. We're always curious about what's out there and what's better. And in general, like, we encourage you guys to actually test out all these different products to see if it works for you. A lot of the email tools are free and or low cost, so they can be helpful. Like, especially if you're on a budget. The other tools for ATSs, etc., those are going to be a lot more costly, but are things that can definitely make that entire kind of workflow a lot more effective for you. But I would encourage actually taking a look at all those different solutions. And a few next steps. So definitely follow us, on like Twitter. We're just at Antello. We do post a lot of updates and articles on new tools and just kind of what's like happening in like recruiting. Oftentimes we actually share a lot of really cool perspectives, from engineers, from like other recruiters. And we also post a good number of blog posts nowadays too. So definitely check us out on like Twitter for more information. And we will be posting this replay on the blog a little bit later today, and I will be shooting this via email to you guys too. And also both both Intello and then John, who's our founder, and then me, we actually post a lot of information on Quora. So please feel free to actually follow us on Quora, because there's a lot of times where there are questions pertaining to recruiting where we'll dive into various topics in a lot more detail. So if you are on Quora, I would highly recommend following us there, as sometimes we will offer some like really good insights into a number of different recruiting related topics. And lastly, yes, and then lastly, obviously, what is a webinar that like we run if I don't have a little bit of information about us. If you would like to kind of find out a little bit more about Intello, feel free to go to like Intello.com. We have some of the capabilities of a few of the tools that I've shown, but the tool definitely is catered towards finding passive candidates, mainly technical in nature. So the tool can be very helpful, especially if you're having a lot of trouble finding engineers and or designers or or like other tech talent. So definitely feel free to just connect with us there. Or if you do have any questions or just like anything in terms of follow-up, feel free to email me directly, which is just my first name, Vivek @Intello.com.